As the House Oversight Committee demanding Minnesota Governor Tim Walz hand over documents as we learn new details about the investigation into the $1 billion welfare fraud scandal. And new reports claiming Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has deep ties to people who personally profited from the alleged fraud. That list includes one of her former campaign officials and a co-owner of the restaurant where Omar held her 2018 congressional victory party.
Okay, guys, welcome to the video. This is Justin Paul, and today I'm going to bring a report on the over $1 billion welfare fraud in Minnesota that's going on right now. And this may not be a widespread topic, but it's something that needs to be examined, and we're going to take and react to this news clip here. But it seems like the walls are going to close in on Tim Walz, as he's been ordered to hand over, documents and stuff like that, because they're going to go through everything with a fine tooth comb, and they pretty much already have a lead in their investigation as far as this fraud that's been going on, and they're saying Ilhan Omar, has ties to several individuals who have committed fraud, and you know it's just crazy how this type of stuff can just go on right under our noses, and no one even says anything, or even when they say something, even when they whistle blow, those whistles aren't being heard or really not listened to and paid attention until Trump's administration got into power here. And it's just crazy, man. $1 billion is nothing to, like, it's nothing to just turn your back on or just sweep under the rug. This is $1 billion in taxpayer money in the state of Minnesota that's pretty much gone in the wind. That billion could have went towards a lot of people who actually need it, and that's just the whole point of it.
It is important to note the Congresswoman has not been directly linked to the fraud herself. Joining us now is the Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Lisa DeMuth, who joins me now. And Lisa, thank you so much for doing just that. $1 billion in taxpayer dollars essentially lit on fire. What is your reaction to this staggering fraud scandal that has rocked your state?
For the last 7 years, we have looked at fraud that has exploded under Governor Tim Walz in autism services. Feeding Our Future, the food scandal during the COVID time, is the largest COVID food scandal, taxpayer money waste in the nation. And we've been sounding the alarm over the years. We're finally getting that national attention that we need so much here in our state to have full investigations. But you're right. It's over $1 billion in taxpayer dollars that have gone out to fraud instead of going to the people that needed those services the most.
Tim Walz is up for re-election. What are people, what are residents in Minnesota saying about this?
Tim Walz is up for his third election here in the state of Minnesota. People were surprised when he was reelected for a second time. But when he was on the national stage just a year ago, it really let the nation know truly who Tim Walz is. Definitely let Minnesotans know his favorability is underwater right now. It's less than 50%, and it's mostly because he has not handled fraud, and he's increased our taxes and fees and spent through a record surplus.
You say that $1 billion could just be the tip of the iceberg. That's a pretty big iceberg. What do you mean by that?
Yes, and that is what we've heard from the acting U.S. attorney in the case, specifically looking at some of these things. That was said by acting attorney, U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson. He said this could be just the tip of the iceberg. It could push north almost to $2 billion. Again, these are taxpayer dollars that have been stolen by fraudsters here in the state of Minnesota.
That's crazy. They're saying it could be well into the twos, $2 billion, guys. And this is people who, work hard every day, pay their taxes, and the money's just being funneled to places where it shouldn't be funneled. You know, it's really unbelievable, honestly. It's like, how do you go to sleep at night knowing that, under your watch, you have this mass amount of fraud and people who voted you into office as governor, they were trusting that you were going to do the right thing by them, and make sure that they was going to receive the assistance that they needed. And, the taxpayers, as she was saying, the taxes have been rising. They was trusting that, this money is going to the right places, it's being allocated the correct way. And as we're starting to get reports, it hasn't been. So, where do we go from here? I do feel like when Tim Walz partnered with Kamala Harris and they were on their campaign, as Lisa DeMuth is saying here, who is the Speaker of the Minnesota House, um, it did put a spotlight on him. And, a lot of his true intentions and true colors were shown when he would have to, get into these debates and, get on stage and, say his 1-2 as far as, what his agenda was and, what he was planning to do as far as, trying to become vice president of the United States. And man, I have to again give a lot of kudos to the American people for actually seeing through, the facade that was put on. They didn't go with the identity politics. They didn't go with the individuals who was bringing entertainers on stage, twerking and just doing all kind of craziness. Just putting on a real clown show that kind of looked past all the entertainment and all the smoke and mirrors and actually seeing people for who they were. And, even with all the scandalous stuff and them trying to, have an attempt on President Trump, um, he was able to persevere and get through. But, this could have been bad for us here in the country as a whole. Cause if on a level like you just being a governor of a state and you're allowing this type of fraud, just imagine the scale that it could have been if you had an office in that White House and you were able to, pull strings and turn blind eyes to bigger fraud than this. And this is pretty big. Like again, man, $1 billion, man. That could feed a lot of people, could house a lot of people, could provide services for a lot of people within the state of Minnesota. You know, not only just the state of Minnesota, but hell, like nationwide. So, man, I just can't believe this. I'm gonna just let her continue here, though.
Well, in 2020, according to the New York Times, the Minnesota Department of Education actually questioned Feeding Our Future, which is one of these fraudulent organizations, about all the requests that they were making. And the organization actually threatened the state agency and said that if you don't give us what we want, we're going to sue you, accuse you of racism. And I don't think we really want that kind of negative press. And the state agency caved. That's just one example of the brazen nature of all of this that took place over the course of 5 years. Why do you think this took so long to uncover?
I think there's been a lack of accountability at the very top of our state. If threats were made such as those, you still push through, investigate the fraud, and stop the fraudulent payments that were going out. That is not what we've experienced here in the state. That is the change that we need from the very top. We're grateful that we've got federal partners that are coming in to truly investigate a number of these cases and look into the records. But accountability starts at the top. So that's with the governor and with his commissioners. That's not what we've experienced here in Minnesota.
Well, speaking of the top, of course, Governor Walz has been questioned about this now that it's been uncovered. And here he is talking about why he believes this took place in Minnesota. Watch this.
Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy.
So he says that this took place in Minnesota because he's doing too good of a job. What do you think about that?
AAA bond rating is not what criminals look at if they're going to come and do criminal behavior here in a state. What I would say is a well-run state, a generous state, and a prosperous state. But a well-run state does not attract criminal behavior. It means that the dollars that are collected from taxpayers go to the people that need it the most, not to fraudsters.
Yeah, and these people stole $1 billion for themselves while claiming it was going to autistic and hungry children. So let's hope that the punishment here truly meets the crime. Lisa DeMuth, Speaker of the Minnesota House of...
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, you create like a hunger, program. They threatened the school board saying, we're going to go and put it out there, sue you guys, saying that you're racist, and, they caved in. If they would have just went ahead and just go ahead and do what you do, then that would have put a lot of spotlight on what's going on too. Way quicker than now. And, using autism, man, it's just like these people have no shame. People have absolutely no shame. But, we're going to continue to follow this story, and, we're going to continue to, report on this stuff because, this is very, very important. And Minnesota may not be the only state that's actually, going to end up in the news over the next few months with, a fraud scandal and stuff like that. So, we're going to stay on top of it. Again, if you like my content, just make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. This is Justin Paul. Peace.